101 review. Book 101 is all about the books that I read for the last 40 years. And today I have my special guest. She is a conscious doula, frequency artist, and of course, an author too of a multi award winning inspirational novel, Trusting the Current. No other than Miss Lynnda Pollio.
Hi, how you doing, Daniel?
I'm fabulous, fabulous, Miss Linda, and thank you so much for being part on Book 101 Review. And can you please introduce more about yourself that I miss?
Okay, my name is Lynnda Pollio. I currently live in Sedona, Arizona, which is a very beautiful natural environment with a lot of spiritual inclinations. I spent most of my adult life in New York City. I was in advertising for a bunch of years, and then I moved into conscious business practices where I became the world's first chief consciousness officer for a global marketing consultancy. I wrote a book, Trusting the Currents, which we're here to talk about, which was totally unexpected. I started hearing the voice of an old Black Southern woman one day, and I was asked to tell her story. So I started writing her story down. It took me about 2 years to channel the book and about 8 years to edit it. And then I really sort of started moving deeper into consciousness and into the study of conscious frequencies and spirituality and all that over the next several years, and ended up sort of becoming a consciousness doula. And what I do with a consciousness doula is help people birth consciousness. We're all going through a big global transformation right now, which is pretty hard to miss. And it's been sort of predicted for generations of indigenous tribes that these times would come, and we have to really start working on understanding ourselves from a broader perspective of consciousness and awareness. So a consciousness doula works with birthing consciousness just like a regular doula works with birthing babies, and a death doula works with birthing people through the death process. I help people through working with them through my book and through my art, frequency art, to help birth the consciousness that is trying to come through them.
Interesting indeed. And thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and wisdom to the world, Miss Linda. So tell us, Trusting the Currents is such an evocative title. What do the currents represent in the context of your story? Are they internal, external, or both?
I think it's a combination of both because I think they interact with each other. I think all currents start from within. Everything that we bring with us into this life and through our ancestors and through past lives and through our childhood experiences create internal currents that lead us into specific directions, whether we know it or not, because most of what we experience in life is unconscious. And that's a big part of what I do, is help the unconscious become conscious. Because once it's conscious, then at least you can start moving in the directions you'd like to move in. Most of the time, we just end up being buffeted through life by unconscious patterns. And trusting the currents mostly is about the currents, the things that happen to you in life, and how sometimes they don't seem like it's something you want, or it can be suffering, it can be struggle, it could be all kinds of challenges that you have to manage. But that if you accept those challenges and you become aware and conscious of the experience you're having, that you can trust the currents to take you where you're supposed to be, even though they may not be taking where you want it yourself to be. And that's kind of what happens to the main character in the book. She starts off thinking she's someone and she's supposed to be doing something, which is what everyone in her family had done. But it turns out that she is someone different, and she follows a different path, and that's where she finds out who she really is.
Something different and interesting, Miss Linda. The idea of trusting implies a release of control. How does your protagonist learn to surrender to these currents? And what is the alternative? The cost of trying fight them.
Well, I think first of all, she has a couple good influences in her life. Her mother, and she has a cousin who her mother kind of guides her as a human being, and her cousin is sort of a spiritual being. So she sort of guides her through introducing her to nature and the power of nature to help her understand herself. So, and then suffering. She goes through a lot of difficult times, and suffering, as long as you stay aware of what is happening to you and you try to find the good in what you're experiencing, suffering can be a great awakener and it can lead you into new directions. So, even when you're going through really difficult times, to trust that difficult time has a silver lining and has gifts for you to follow once you become aware of it. So, trusting the currents is about trusting the currents that happen to you in life, both internally and externally. And it's also about beginning to understand how frequencies work in your life. And so she begins to trust that. And as the story goes on, she ends up in a completely different direction in her life than she expected to be, and she becomes much wiser a young girl, because the book is when she's a young girl, and you don't really know where it all leads her. Which I think the part about trusting the currents is that you don't have to know where you're going. You just have to trust that the decisions you're making and what you learn about yourself in the process is going to lead you to the place that you're supposed to be in the end.
So tell us, Miss Linda, water is often a symbol of emotion, intuition, and subconscious. How does your protagonist learn to hear and interpret the whispers of these deeper currents in her life?
Well, again, I think her cousin, who teaches her how to listen to nature and how to learn from nature, I think that helps her. She learns to go out in nature and listen to the rustling of the trees and the movement of the animals and learn from their patterns. She learns by making mistakes, which we all make, and by paying attention to the mistakes that she makes and not blaming anyone else, but really looking at why she made the decisions that she's made. So I think that's sort of how she does that. She has good influences around her, even though there are a lot of bad influences around her too. But she's learned to she starts learning more about herself and going inside herself to learn who she really is. So she then knows who to trust more and who to believe more and how to move through life with more grace.
How to move through the grace for sure. And on character and transformation, can you introduce us to your main character at the start of the story? What is the fundamental fear or belief she must overcome to learn to trust the currents?
Well, I think the first thing, she's raised in a small town and everyone is sort of the same, and she's a little bit different, not as different as her cousin, but she learns to she learns the power of education. It begins, I think, when she's young and a new teacher comes into town and really gets her involved in reading. So before that, she was just focused on her small town. She was just going to find some local boy, get married, live just like her mother and her mother before. And education, beginning to read books, opened her up to the world outside of her town, which was called Oakville. So then she started dreaming about those places, and she started dreaming about places beyond the Great River, and started dreaming about people that were different than her. And then she started going a little bit outside of her town and meeting people who are different from her. so that she got a perspective, not only about how other people lived and thought, but also it gave her perspective on how she thought and why she thought that way, and how it was different from whatever from what other people thought. So she was this young girl just beginning to blossom, and she had had a difficult life. Her father had died. I think, so many people, most people, in fact, come from difficult childhoods. We don't really know what happens to all of us. I mean, we all have things that we bring with us into our adulthood that we're still navigating, and that's what she learned to navigate, were the struggles that she had in her childhood. And then she follows her cousin and learns about herself. She learns from the mistakes that she makes. She learns from some of the tragedies that happen in her life. So by the time the story is over, she's basically evolved. Not only in age, she obviously ages a few years during the show, but she also during the movie, but she also just evolves on a conscious level, because she starts paying attention to the things around her instead of feeling like she's a victim of them. She becomes a participant.
Participant, I like that story. Miss Linda and the catalyst of change, or for change. What is the event realization that throws her into the river, so to speak, forcing her to stop navigating from a place of control and start learning to trust?
I think probably the fact that she learns that everything she had been told in her life was not true. When you're young, and we do that now, authority figures tell us things and we assume they're true, or we're manipulated into thinking that they're true. And I think as we begin to really spend time within ourselves and learn more about the world outside of us, we realize that everything that we're taught is not the truth. So then she has to find out what that truth is for her, and who she truly is, and not who other people. I think a big part of it is in the beginning, she learns that she is not who other people told her she was. And that began the journey of finding out who she really was.
Indeed, indeed, Miss Linda. And what is the primary force of resistance in each a person? A circumstances or internal flow, or like a doubt or
Uh,
fear?
Fear. I mean, we are fearful beings from the time we're born. I mean, we're born happy beings, and we're told who we are. We're told what religion we are. We're told what country we live in. We're told what family we're lived in. We're told what social economic. And so we're calcified very, very early on. So, and then that just continues on as we go through school, and we just follow the path that we are told we're supposed to follow. I mean, I hear that we spend the first half of our life um, learning, and then we spend the second half of our life unlearning what we were told we had to learn. So, and I think, in the book, what she does is she begins probably earlier than most to unlearn what she was told she was supposed to be. And that's a very scary thing. I mean, fear keeps people under control. That's why I think we live in such a fearful environment, because it's easy to control people when they're afraid. And it's easier to get people to hate other people when they're afraid. So I think fear is the biggest motivator for um, kind of acceptance into a way of life that may not be something that makes you happy or that keeps you happy. Because in the end, we all die. And at the end of your life, the things you're going to regret are probably not the things that you regret right now. So I think it's important that people really take a look at why they make decisions, because most of our decisions are made out of fear.
Miss Linda, as conscious doula, frequency artist, as well as an author, what are your short term and long term goals?
Short-term goals is to navigate as best I can through these tumultuous days that we're living in the world, and keep my heart as open as possible, and keep my perspective as open as possible to include as many different points of view. As long as, for me the answers always lie in the heart. So as long as the person that I'm dealing with is heart based, no matter what their belief systems are, because we can't really always um, do anything about our belief systems for a while because they've been so ingrained in us. But if you keep your own heart open for other people's belief systems, then that gives them space to change, and it gives you space to learn about someone new. So I think short term, it's about just keeping myself stable and open while we go through this global transformation. Long term, I would like to see myself, particularly, helping people go through the awakening process. I think many people are beginning to wake up to a new level of consciousness, and most of them don't even know it's happening. They just know that they're not happy. They know they don't really fit in anymore. They don't really want to do their jobs. They don't want to live where they're living. They're having all kinds of difficult ideas, and it's just because they're having an awakening and they don't have any support, they don't have any guidance, and they don't have any tools to be able to navigate that. And so they're trying to either go back to where they were, or they're getting angry, or they're getting upset, and they're getting scared, and they're getting sad. So I'd like to, for the rest of my life anyway, I'm an elder now, and I really feel that I'm here to be of service to people that are going through this awakening process so they can get through it as quickly as possible, and we can move into a way better world than we're living in right now.
Good luck to your goals, Miss Linda. Looking forward for more success.
Thank you.
And
Thanks, Daniel.
you are most welcome. And what will be your piece of advice for those people out there want to be like you?
Well, they don't have to be like me. They have to find who they are. I call it your inner resident signature. You know, we've basically been programmed, socially conditioned from the time we're born. So that inner resident signature, that one frequency that is you alone, who you feel the most like you, has been covered up like an onion by all the social conditioning. And my hope is that people learn to unwind that onion and take off all those layers of social conditioning so that they can find that one frequency that is theirs alone. So they don't have to be like me. They just have to find out who they really are.
Thank you for that advice, Miss Linda. Can you please recommend a book or books that influence your journey?
Oh my God, there's so many of them. I mean, there's a book that I've been reading lately, which is probably the most recent one I'm reading, and I think it's called Letting Go by David Hawkins. I think he's passed now, but it's all about learning to. It's actually about trusting the current. It's a nonfiction book, but it really helps you kind of, and it gives practical exercises too to sort of understand who you are and to let go of your perceptions about things and let go of your fears so that you can uncover exactly who you really are.
Thank you for that advice, Miss Linda. And can you
Mhm.
please recommend a book or books that influence your journey?
Um, Trying to think of one. Well, the funny thing is, I think books that influenced my journey early on were um, Saint Exupery's The Little Prince, which was a little small book um, that was not quite a children's book. And I also had a little book when I was a kid called Slappy the Duck, which is what all of my books are about. I mean, everything that influenced me outside of things that really taught me about frequency and consciousness were really about books about discovering who you are. So that I think if everyone can discover who they really are, and if you really know who you are, you're no longer angry and you're no longer sad, and you may go up and down emotionally, but you're not holding all these dark sort of thoughts in you that people are harboring right now. So all the books that have influenced me throughout my life, and there have been a lot. I've just finished reading one too about how the how the how the earth healed. I could probably give it to you, but it's a book about laying on the earth and letting the earth heal you, because the earth has an enormous amount of energy and frequency that can heal you emotionally, physically, psychologically. So, yeah, any book that tells you how to do that is good.
Thank you for that recommended book, Miss Linda. And before we wrap up our discussion for today, I'm inviting you to please don't listen to my other podcast.
Okay.
People, my other podcast, because my abstract essay is already in fifth season, abstract poetry in second season, and my book 101 review in fifth season too. Comedy 101 in second season, and my food 101 in fifth season as well. Geography 101 in fourth season, and my baby podcast, Law 101 and Mental Health 101, Love Letters in third season, and Movie 101 review and Music 101 in fourth season, and Science 101 and Sex 101 in its first season. Please listen to them wherever you listen your podcast. So, Miss Linda, tell us, after spending so much time with this story, what does a trusting the currents mean to you, and how do you practice in your daily life?
Um, I very much about self awareness. So, trusting the currents for me is about being present, not getting too pushed out into. I don't really watch the news. I stay within a small internal world so that I can understand who I am on a day-to-day basis, because there's so much noise out there right now and so much interference that I want to be able to trust the currents of my own journey and in my own life. So yeah, it's for me, it's just about being present to myself. And I have a small group of people that I'm really connected to. And I think it's really important that we have surrounded ourselves, and it could be one or two people, it doesn't have to be a lot, and it usually isn't, that we can talk to honestly, and we can share that inner resonance signature, that one thing that is just us, so that we get feedback on that, and we get people to see who we really are, because we really don't know who we are in a lot of ways unless it's seen through the eyes of someone else.
Yes, and thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and wisdom to the world, Miss Linda. And can you please invite our listeners to support your book, your advocacy, or whatever projects that you're doing right now?
Yeah, well, the two things, I mean, obviously trusting the currents is kind of, I mean, Addie Mae Aubrey, who is the main narrator of the book, the African-American woman, she's been the most influential person in my life. So I have a very strong passion for this book, and really does help people that are going through a difficult time to trust the currents. And then I have my frequency art, which I've recently begun to do, which brings frequency in from the cosmos so that we can disrupt some of the negative energies out there and bring in some of the positive energies. So those are the two things that I have the most passion about right now. It's all frequency based. I'm a frequency nut.
Yes, people, let's support Miss Lynnda Pollio, because if we support her for sure, more and more empowering books like this to come. So, Miss Linda, thank you so much for your time.
Thanks, Daniel. Appreciate it.
More to come, people. See you soon.